Good evening, Vikings fans. This is Justin in Rochester at jday_24 on Twitter, and this is another episode of Purple and Gold for Days. It is late night edition. It is bi-week late night edition, but we're still going to have Micah Patriot and Mike Estolino join me here shortly, who is one of my co-hosts on the Purple Code Monday nights at 6:30 Central Time. It's called A Day with Mike and Kyla. And here he is. Let's bring him into the conversation. Hold on just a moment. Mike, how are you, my friend?
I'm okay, Justin. How are you?
I'm good. Been a long weekend thus far, but one of the last few before that snow hits us here in Minnesota. So, first off, how are you feeling, my friend?
I feel better than I did a couple of days ago, but in all seriousness, I feel pretty good with the Vikings record. I mean, 5-1. You take that 10 times out of 10. So I'm really excited for the rest of the season. It's what I was hoping the season would be. As you knew last year, I said to get a new coach and see what Cousins could do and improve a year. Well, 5-1 is a pretty good start to improve a year.
No doubt about it. That is absolutely a fact here. So, just so everybody know, please comment, like, and subscribe on this podcast feed as well. And again, this one is called Purple and Gold for Days. We're still going to do our show weekly with myself and Mike and Kyla on the Purple Code, which we're also simulcasting on here tonight as well. So we want to thank them. We want to thank Rick and SK in particular for giving us the platforms here. But having said all that, we're going to do some musings, some shorts here and there, and a couple of bi-weekly episodes as well. So before we get started, Mike, first off, again, good to hear you're feeling better, and we'll be back again. Tell us real quick about our special guest who's going to join us on Monday evening for our show, our normal show on the Purple Code with Dave, Mike, and Kyla.
Well, we're going to be having a special guest on named Nicole. She's from Vancouver, so she's a big Vikings fan like us. So her Twitter bio is just a girl crying about the Minnesota Vikings, so she knows about the ups and downs of the Minnesota Vikings. Can't wait to have her on. Go back to the roots of what I initially started my channel first off when I got to know you was as the Purple Code Canada. There'll be 3 Canadians on yourself, Justin. I'm looking forward to it on Monday. It should be really good.
Well, it's going to be a lot of fun here. So we're just going to take a little bit of time tonight here to kind of, quick recap the, first 6 games of the season, kind of give our thoughts here. But I'm going to start with this, Mike. All of this talk about who we should sign or who we should pick up or should we make some trades. Here's my thoughts. Odell Beckham Jr. from 6 years ago, maybe. Today, coming off an ACL, I'm just not hearing it. And that's putting aside the fact that we really don't have the salary cap space to be able to absorb another player like that. Who will we cut off the 53-man roster? I don't know. I don't care, because at the end of the day, it's a guy who's number 53 on a roster that's probably not going to get picked up by anybody anyway. So if it was anybody of consequence, you just put him back in the practice squad 3 days later. But to me, I don't want to make short-sighted moves just to get a guy in here because we started off 5-1. I understand the LSU connection, the friendship with Justin Jefferson, and the familiarity with Kevin O'Connell, but I mean, if it happened, would I be like, oh, great? No, not really. I think it's a little overblown, this talk about how he might, disrupt the locker room and all this other good stuff. I mean, I think that's a little bit overblown. From my perspective, I don't see, I mean, are there salary cap tricks that they could use, to move some money around to make room for him? Yes. But I think that borrowing money from future cap years by, putting void years on somebody and moving stuff around is just not worth it to me. I mean, what are your thoughts on the Odell Beckham? I haven't had a chance to talk to you about it. So what are your thoughts on that real quick?
Sure. I would do it. We talked about this. I think it was in early September or late August with Odell. I would do it, but this is the reality. We don't have the cap space. And the only move that I really would feel comfortable making to create cap space at all is extending Dalvin Thomas, because he's been really good this season. And we can agree he would earn his extension, right? He's earned it. He's played really well. And he's talking about void years. He's got a nice void year coming up in a couple of years' time. Oh, God, Rick Spielman left us with a giant pile of mess with some of these contracts. But anyway, that's the only move I feel comfortable making. Save a few $1 million, and then you bring in a player. But with Odell, I don't think it's going to happen, because if we're being real, we're not ahead of Kansas City or Buffalo for attractiveness as a destination. We're just not.
Or Philly, for that matter.
And this is not to take a shot at him. Who do you want to play at with? Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, or Kirk Cousins? Seriously. It's not that difficult of an answer. It's easily one of the other two. And as you alluded to, the only thing that could get Odell in Minnesota, and I think it's literally a 0.1% chance, like it's so low, I would be shocked if it happened, would be the LSU connection. Ed Ingram, Patrick Peterson, Daniil Hunter. That's our only fighting chance. And then Kevin O'Connell and Willis Phillips were in LA last year, so he knows the offense really well. But
right.
If we're being real, okay, take the purple Kool-Aid out of it. It's not happening, guys.
No, I put it at about a 10% chance. I'm not going to say zero because you can never say zero. But if I'm being honest, to me, I'm not going to be like, oh, I cannot believe they did that, and why did they do that, and shake my head at it. It does nothing for me. Can we put this Ndamukong Suh thing to bed too? By the way, listen.
Why is that a thing? Who's? I'll be honest. I don't know who made it a thing. Particularly, I could care less who made it a thing. It's dead in my eyes because we actually don't need him. If you actually look at what the problem with this team is, it's really the pass rush from the outside with Daniil Hunter more than it is the inside. In fact, Dalvin Tomlinson has been as good as Ndamukong Suh was basically his entire career. This Dalvin Tomlinson has been a top 10 defensive tackle. Like, people need to stop. The Ndamukong Suh is finished. The Detroit Lions, Ndamukong Suh is a long, long way away. He is gone. That guy is finished. Like, people need to wake up and smell the coffee. No, I absolutely want nothing to do with that. I would take Odell 10 times over Ndamukong Suh. I don't want anything to do with that.
No, to me, I don't know why there is such a desire that we need to get somebody and add something. I understand that a lot of what's going on through the first 6 games has been a lot of good breaks. I'm not going to say good luck. I'm going to say good breaks. Okay. And you're right that just assume that everything is going to sustain the way it has is probably, a fool's errand. But why do we feel like we need to make such a dastardly amount of moves to make this team better? This team is finding ways to win games that they couldn't do for the last 2 years, basically. What's wrong with the guys we have? Yes, the offense needs to be more consistent. We'll talk about that. Defensively, yeah, they're a lot of bend but don't break, and they're giving up less than 20 points a game. That's all well and good, but who have we played? What quarterbacks have we played? That sort of thing. What makes you think that we can just bring somebody else in here that's just going to say, oh, well, that's going to solve all of the issues that we have? Because it's not. Now, if you can get a halfway decent tight end, if you can get a halfway decent cornerback, particularly one that can be a nickel cornerback or a slot cornerback, as it were, I'm listening to that. But, Odell Beckham and Ndamukong Suh, those guys don't do anything for me at this point. And I'm almost really kind of tired of listening to the possibilities. Listen, if they brought Odell Beckham in here and he was going to be a good soldier and he wasn't going to disrupt the locker room, they were going to be able to find ways to utilize him in conjunction with Jefferson and Thielen and KJ and company and a little Jalen Reagor here or there, maybe, I don't know. But, okay, fine. But to your point, Ndamukong Suh does not bring anything more to me than what we already have. And because he would carry such a high value name from the past, there would be, all kinds of expectations that frankly would be almost impossible to meet. Not that he's not capable of it, but from the standpoint of, even if he did come in and play well, is it really going to move the needle that much? So to me, I'm kind of over it at this point.
Yeah. Odell's the only one I would take. And I actually, we've talked about this before. I'm not going to kill a dead horse. I would take Odell because I actually think he would be wide receiver 3 on this team. If he got healthy, I really do believe he would actually be a game changer for this offense potentially. But the Suh thing doesn't do anything for me. Zero.
So having said all that, why don't you give me the quick rundown of your thoughts of the game? Because we haven't had a chance to speak on air since the Dolphins game. I said my piece on Tuesday with Kyla. Offensively, if you have 15 drives, you cannot have 11 3-and-outs. And I know the official number is 10, but frankly, the field goal that they got off of that interception by Harrison Smith, they went 3-and-out and kicked a field goal. So for all intents and purposes, 11 out of their 15 drives. Okay, out of 14, because that 15th one was just kneeled down. Fine. Ostensibly, 11 out of 14 drives, you went 3-and-out here. This offense, talk to me, Mike.
Okay, well, everyone thinks, we're the negative guys because we like scoring over. But in all seriousness, 10 3-and-outs, are you kidding me? Like, are you joking? We were so lucky to win that game. Ryan Wright was literally special teams player of the week. When does a punter win that award? I don't think a punter has ever won that award this season. And I cannot name the last time a punter's won that award. That is a joke because he punted that many times and we won. That was a big reason why he won the NFC Special Teams Player of the Week.
No, that's a fact.
Kirk Cousins. Okay. I love what they're doing. I actually think it's great that they ice him up on the road. I think it is building him up with confidence. But dear Lord, he was melting in the Miami Heat like Frosty the Snowman. He was awful. He was so bad. Like, aside from the fourth quarter, and we've talked about this, I am sick and tired of these disgusting disappearing acts. Enough. Like, when is enough? And I'm going to say this right now. This bye week, you talked about it before. I think when you did the show with Kyla, and you were spot on. When we play Arizona onward, I don't want to hear that the offense is a new offense. I don't want to hear that they need to adapt anymore. Enough. This defense carried us to a victory. And if it wasn't for Matt Daniels and that special teams too, we lose. Pathetic, but you take 5-1 all day long, and that's the great part of football is a win is a win is a win, and you don't apologize for it. But this offense needs to wake up.
No, I'll say this. We can also throw some of the Miami's ineptitude in there as well with all the penalties that they had and the turnovers and bad quarterback play and all that good stuff. I'm going to say this. I was in a space the other day with Joe from the Grade 8 on the Purple Coat. Number one Kirk Cousins fan. Bigger Kirk Cousins fan than Kirk Cousins' wife is a Kirk Cousins fan. We all know that. But jokes aside, I will take this version of Kirk Cousins over the version of Kirk Cousins we've seen thus far. From the standpoint of, by hook or by crook, he has found the ability to be clutch when necessary. Now, we need to find a little bit more of a balance between the guy that puts up, 4,200 yards and 30-plus touchdowns and less than 7 interceptions, the guy who can make plays and get a lot of yardage and all that good stuff, and the guy that's been clutch this year. If Kevin O'Connell and company can find a way to mold those two, because whether he's the same quarterback physically or not, he's definitely not the same quarterback mentally. He has that mentality that we have been begging for years, that we have said, does he have this? This is the one piece he doesn't have. So I would rather we be sitting where we're at, where we have seen Kirk Cousins demonstrate that he has that clutch gene for the first time consistently. I'm not saying he's never done it before, but he hasn't done it consistently like this. And we don't need to go down the road of how much of it was him and how much of it was his defense. It's a little column A and a little column B. It's not one or the other. They don't have to be mutually exclusive. But to me, I would rather have these lumps early against mediocre to bad teams where Kirk has found the ability to say, all right, this hasn't gone very well, but we can still make a play. I said it before on our show after the Chicago game. I'll say it one more time. When he threw that interception against Chicago, yes, it could have been timed better because we've been asking, hey, don't always check down. Okay, you did make up a good point that it was first down right after getting a penalty, so maybe that was a touch too aggressive. But I will take the trade-off between being a touch too aggressive, being not aggressive enough at times. The next time he got the ball, which was the last time they had the ball of a meaningful again, I don't count kneel downs, came out and had that 7-minute umpteen play drive to take the lead, score a touchdown. There have been previous iterations of Kirk Cousins where after he throws an interception like that, he would just be in his own head. For example, take the San Francisco game last year when, you're kind of in a dogfight against San Francisco. And frankly, the Vikings have always had trouble going out to San Francisco and playing, particularly this version of them because they have such a good offensive and defensive line for that matter. That when he threw that interception, it was basically a pick six. It was an interception down to the 1 yard line, and they scored a play or two later. So it's not a pick six, but it might as well have been. You could see for the next 3 weeks that was still in his head. On the other hand, this year, Chicago throws an interception, comes right back out on the field, and it didn't bother him. So for all the stuff we've ever said about Kirk Cousins, good, bad, or indifferent, I will take this version. I hope that this version can get closer to the previous version without losing some of that clutch gene. But to your point, yes, this offense as a whole. So now we're going to move beyond Kirk and I'll talk about the offense as a whole. There have been games where the offensive line has looked so much better than it did last year, and there's been games where it's looked rather pitiful, much like it has basically since Kirk Cousins got here. So to your point, the entire offense needs to be better. It needs to be more consistent. You can set your watch to the Vikings offense. They will come out, they will look good, and then they'll disappear for a while. Some of it by circumstance of the game, some of it just because they didn't execute very well. And then at the end, they come back and make a play or two to win the game, which is great. But when you get against these better teams, when you start playing Arizona, I know that Arizona's inconsistent, but we saw what they did Thursday night. And we know what Kyler Murray and any other running quarterback can do against this defense. Okay. When you play a team like that, when you play a team like Buffalo and Dallas, and even though it's at home, New England, you're not going to be able to have these long stretches lulls in the offense there. So, yes, to your point, they need to get far more consistent and far more better from that particular standpoint. I know that was a long, rambling dissertation. So, on one hand, I am saying, yes, you're absolutely right. They need to be better as a whole, but I still like what I'm seeing out of Kirk this year far more than I have, I mean, frankly, in any of the 4 years that he's been our quarterback. What say you?
No, and I think that's fair. Let me make this really clear. In the fourth quarter, he's actually played like a top 5 quarterback. You look at every statistical category, he's been fantastic. And yes, you take the game-winning drives, and you don't apologize for it. But if we're being honest, this offense, if they do not get consistently better through 4 quarters, they're not going to continue to win. And it's concerning to me only because I feel like they can be better. And I don't know if maybe we overrated them a touch, which could be a legitimate thing. Like maybe they're not a top 5 offense, and maybe their peak is a top 10 unit. I don't know. But at the end of the day, the Vikings have to be more consistent offensively. There is no ifs, buts about it. If it doesn't happen now, it will not happen.
I agree with something that you said a moment ago, and it's something that you and I have both said. I've used the phrase statute of limitations. The notion of, hey, well, we're still learning to do this and we're still adjusting to each other. Okay, what do we always hear? Well, it's the bye week and they, excuse me, self-scout and all that other good stuff. That self-scout needs to be in full force, number one. And number two, it needs to lead somewhere. You can't come out and have a slow start against Arizona. Particularly, listen, our defense is going to give up yards. We all know that. Hopefully the defense can get a turnover or two, and hopefully Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury can sabotage themselves. But this is the point in time where, all right, you got some wins stacked up. You've built yourself a margin for error by having not played your best football. It's time to step it up a notch. We went into this, everybody does their season prediction records and all this other stuff. And what I said was, here's what I think is going to happen, but with the expectations that they have put on themselves, here's what should happen. And frankly, they have achieved that to the surprise of some, myself included. But having said that, you've raised the bar on yourselves by going 5-1. That's all good. We like 5-1. It's a lot better than 1-5 or 3-3 like we were this time last year. Absolutely. But offensively, this was the strength of this team. You're going to need to be better. It's going to need to start a week from tomorrow with an opponent, regardless of how inconsistent he may be in Kyler Murray and company. This offense is going to have to start pulling up their end of the way, pulling themselves up and putting their yeoman's work in and being the reason we win some of these games. You are right. The defense has been, and the special teams has been a lot of the reason we have been in these games to give the opportunity to the offense to win or to flat out win it themselves. There is going to come a point where the defense that they've been playing, as exciting as it may be at times where they just make a key play, that the pumpkin's going to turn into a carriage pretty quick that way. So let's talk about the defense here. I'm still trying to decide, should I raise my expectations on what I should expect from this defense, or is this defense giving pretty much what could be expected of that? And the reason I say that is the defense wasn't the strength of this team. It was undoubtedly the weakness. They've been terrible for the last couple of years. They have played better. They have given up fewer points. But as we said earlier, can it be sustainable? What do you see that the biggest key to this defense is? We talked a little bit about it when we were talking about Ndamukong Suh about the outside pressure, but elaborate on what this defense needs to improve on the most in order for this to be sustained, Mike.
Well, I think it's just straight up the only thing they need to continue is causing turnovers because they are what we thought they were. And I'm not saying to be funny or anything. If you expected them to be a top 10 unit, you were probably tricking yourself. This team defensively is doing the most they can. I guess they could play a little bit less soft coverage. Sure, I can understand that. More man on man, fine. But as we've talked about previously, the cavalry is not coming. There isn't going to be any new additions aside from Andrew Booth getting healthy and playing. And maybe Asamoah, Ryan Asamoah. Like that's it. It's as simple as that. The defense is a very, very solid unit for what they are. Dad Donato's doing the best he can. Sure, could they do a little bit better? I guess. but they're playing their hearts out. They've caused so many turnovers. This is the most I really thought this defense was going to do. They've exceeded my expectations, and I'll be honest, if we expect more, we're probably being unfair.
So outside of the pass rush, what do you see is something that they need to improve? I mean, they need to improve on many areas. They need to be far more consistent pass rush. I mean, Zadarius Smith this past week was an absolute man-child, but to expect that level of play out of any player week in and week out is a little much to ask. Do you see a spot in this secondary that can be improved? You mentioned Andrew Booth Jr. Do you think that can make a meaningful difference, or they just kind of are who they are at this point?
I want to say this without trying to be sarcastic in any way. I honestly think Ed Donato's like Mike Zimmer when it comes to the philosophy of rookies, based off what I've seen. Mm-hmm. He doesn't like to use them particularly much. The only thing I could see in Booth being meaningful is he gets Chance Sullivan to eat the pie, and play slot corner. But everyone tells me that he's basically an outside guy, so I doubt it. I honestly don't see much of a difference defensively. Like, who's going to step in? I mean, Lewis Cine was supposed to be the guy we got a lot out of at his rookie season, but he's hurt, right? He broke his leg and had horrible injury. So I don't think we're going to see much aside from Booth potentially playing in the slot as a rotation with Chance Sullivan. I don't see any significant changes.
So moving forward then, last one, because I forgot, because you weren't there Tuesday. What are we going to do about this Greg Joseph situation? Are we just stuck? Because once again, it's the Vikings, it's a kicker, and it is what it is. I mean, he looked really good in training camp. Okay, yeah, great. Who doesn't look really good in training camp? Looked good the first couple of weeks of the season, but it's becoming a trend. It's no longer a mirage that he's been inconsistent with his field goals and a couple of missed extra points here and there. Mike, what are we going to do with this kicker here?
I don't know. Yeah, I really, honest to God, I don't know. Obviously, I joked around on Tuesday when I sent the comment about Ryan Longwell. But in all seriousness, and this might sound really, really dumb, but I'm being serious. We kind of did this to ourselves by cutting Kai Forbath. He was solid. He actually was the guy who didn't backbreak us, who actually made clutch kicks. And I know he's too old to bring back. I'm not saying that. But the Vikings kind of did this to themselves over the years. And Daniel Carlson should have been the solution, really. He really should have been, but Mike Prefer can't stand that guy. He ruined him. And with Greg Joseph, though, back to reality here, because I could rattle off so many kickers, which is sad. We rattle off kickers like teams rattle off quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. But Greg Joseph, this is it. I don't think he's back next year. And he shouldn't be. Why on earth would this team pay him $3+ million when you can go get a rookie for $900,000? Why? There's no reason to. Like, I will say this, and this is being very, very facetious. If the Raiders lose this week, call them up and see if they'd be willing to do Daniel Carlson. And I know that sounds so dumb, but if they're 1-5, it couldn't hurt to make a phone call, right?
What would you give up for him? Anything of significance, or are you just saying it? And I know you're being sarcastic.
But I'm being somewhat sarcastic, but I'm being real when I say I would trade. Oh, the things we don't have a fourth. Honest to God, I would trade a future 4th and 5th round selection immediately. I'm so done with. Heck, if the Raiders made me trade a 3rd,
that's a bit much.
I might do it.
Come on, really?
No. Well, think about it like this. We have compensatory picks coming in. Quessy likes to trade down, right? He showed that far too much last April. So if you traded down out of the 2nd or down, 5-10 spots in the 2nd round, you could easily pick up a 3rd round pick. So honestly, though, I am being real, though. I would trade for Daniel Carlson if there was a chance. There is no chance they would take that, by the way. But I would do it. I'm so sick and tired of this kicking position. It's a joke. It's a joke. A kicker. Like, come on now. We've had better quarterbacks than we've had kickers in my life as a Vikings fan. Like, what is that?
Well, That's a good conversation piece. What's been more consistent or inconsistent over the last 30 years? The Vikings quarterbacks or the Vikings kickers. That's a very good
That's
talking
pathetic.
point. It really is. Well, I'm going to say this to a point that Rick had made a few weeks ago about the tight end position, particularly in the red zone. We were struggling in the red zone. That guy from Miami looked last week, and again, I'm not saying it because we saw him score 2 touchdowns against us. One was kind of in garbage time, but that Mike Gesicki guy.
Gesicki, yeah.
Does he do anything for you? And do you think that the Vikings could possibly swing something with Miami? I know that they're probably going to want to go another game, at least maybe 2, with Tua Tagovailoa. But from what I'm hearing, he's not all that happy there in Miami to the extent of he might be able to be gotten. I mean, I'm not giving up anything more than the third at best. I would say fourth, but
no, he's on a 1-year deal.
He's only got 1 year left on his deal. I mean, does that do anything for you, or do you still have the belief that Irv Smith can figure it out and get us to the point to give us some consistency at the tight end position?
Well, I'll say this with Gesicki. Tua clearly does not utilize Miami, and I have seen multiple reports that he is expected to get dealt by the deadline. So take with that a grain of salt. It's the media. You never know.
Mm-hmm.
But would I rather acquire him than a kicker or something else? Put it this way. I'd rather have an extra corner than a tight end in Gesicki because 2 things. Not only will you have to pay probably a third, you'd imagine it's going to be at least a third. I'd be shocked that Miami would deal him for a 5th-round pick. I'd be shocked. They just franchised him in July or whatever that was.
Right.
So I think with the Vikings, with Gesicki, the reason I say absolutely not is how do you create the cap space? We're like $300,000 under the cap right now. What are we gonna? We're gonna restructure Kendricks. We're gonna extend Dalvin, or restructure Thielen and a different restructure Kendricks and a different player like Thielen.
They're not.
No,
they're not.
That's what you have to do.
But they're not doing anything with Dalvin Cook. This might be his last year. They are not extending or redoing anything with Dalvin Cook. I can tell you that right now.
And Thielen, that's my point.
Right.
How are you going to get the money? And I'll be honest, with all due respect, and Rick's great, I really do think this tight end thing's getting overblown. Like, what was Kyle doing the last few years? He wasn't particularly great.
In the red zone, he was still something. I think that's what his point was.
Red more zone. In 2019, but yes, he was something. I think Irv Smith can do that. I honestly, people need to remember, the guy did not have an entire training camp. He got injured again, and he has played well the last couple of weeks. He was a big part of the game-winning drive against Chicago. He caught 2 big passes there, and he caught a touchdown last week. And Kirk wanted to throw at him a second one, but he wasn't open. So it does go to show you, they do value Irv Smith. And again, are we going to play 2 tight end sets? Like, we're not going to bench Irv Smith for Mike Gesicki. So we're going to completely transform our offense for a guy who doesn't block. Gesicki is a straight-up weapon. That's all he is. He's another receiver. I say absolutely not. I don't want Gesicki. Not only do I think he's way too expensive for what he brings, the cap situation, that will be a mess. Like, no.
I'll say this. Your point about the cap situation, absolutely. But I mean, it's no different than having to figure out how to get cap space for, an Odell Beckham Jr., for example, because Odell Beckham Jr. is not coming here for veterans minimum. He's going to want a halfway decent contract. But one thing I did see out there was, what if the Vikings offered up a 3rd-round pick, but Miami had to eat, 2/3 of the salary? That's a little bit higher of a draft pick than I would be willing to give up. But
you better get an extension done. Like, I'm sorry, if you trade a 3rd-round pick for a rental, that's brutal. Like, that's pretty bad.
I said no to a third. I would do a 5th straight up.
We would have to trade.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. I'm saying theoretically, what I would say is that I'm not giving up a third unless Miami's like literally taking all of his salary for the rest of the year, which is not going to happen. Even if we had a 4th, I wouldn't give a 4th straight up. I would give a 5th straight up, and I'd find a way around the salary cap. But would I be willing to listen to giving up a third if Miami took on a vast majority of his contract? That gets me to the table. I'm not saying I would do it because you're right. That would then require either benching Irv Smith or playing more 2 tight end sets. But to me, you can play two tight end sets and just not have, if it's a passing situation, you can still have two tight ends and three wides out there. I mean, somebody'd have to stay in block for max protect, but that's a deal that I'm interested. I guess what I'm saying is, apples to apples. If you're asking me, would I rather have Odell or Gesicki? I'd rather have Gesicki. I mean, would you rather have Odell or would you rather have Gesicki?
Yeah, I'd rather Odell.
Okay,
because I don't think Odell would be the same cap space, and I actually think Odell's a better player. I no disrespect to Mike Gesicki. I think he is a solid tight end, but again, and this is not to be disrespectful to Kirk Cousins, I think he's a very solid quarterback. Does he elevate him? Like again, if you're trading for third round pick, now fifth, I'm with you on that. Sure. If Miami's willing to take it for a fifth round pick and move him, fine, do it. But I don't love the fit. I don't. We don't have an offense where he would be getting the ball. If we didn't have Irv Smith, yes, absolutely, 10 times out of 10. If Johnny Munn and what's the guys? Jacob Hollister were the only tight ends on our roster.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely, 10 times over. But I just don't see the fit. I just don't. And maybe that's just me, but I'd rather have Odell all day.
So let's wrap here a little bit. Don't want to get too late because I know out on the East Coast we're getting to about 8:45 here. So let's talk realistically about the expectations we have for the rest of the season here real quick. I don't say we need to go through the schedule game by game, win, loss, but let's just look at what we have, look at what we've seen, what we think is, like I said, sustainable and what isn't, where we see the Vikings record being, and maybe we can talk a little bit around the NFC North. For tomorrow's games. I mean, there's only one game that we really care about all that much. But realistically, what are your thoughts for the rest of the season vis-a-vis what we expected and what we've seen thus far from this team as far as record-wise goes? And would it be, I guess the question I'll pose to you, would it be a massive disappointment if this team did not win the division at this point?
Yes. I think it would be a disappointment. I don't know about massive yet. If they lose to Washington, yes, they have to win it. I think they should win it. Yeah, I don't see any reason why they don't. How many teams are better than us on our schedule? Buffalo and Dallas. The rest of I'm sorry. If Kirk Cousins is going to earn his contract this year, you beat Arizona. You beat New England on Thanksgiving. You beat Detroit, Green Bay, Chicago. Those teams are not better than us right now. They're just not. And I'm sorry. I've heard a lot about this. The Jets are not better than us. Enough. The Jets quarterback cannot
Their
throw
defense is still pretty good. Defense is – the Jets defense is for real.
I get that. They have – but they're coming to Minnesota.
Green Bay.
Yes, but Green Bay does not have the offense we do, and we can agree on that. And Kevin O'Connell, again, he knows Robert Saleh. Because the Rams-Niners rivalry for all those years, so he knows the scheme there, what he's running a little bit. I think there's no reason we don't end this season minimum 11 wins. I'm sorry, and if people take offense to that, then shame on you, but there's no reason they should not win 11-plus games. There's no reason. The schedule is wide open to be the number 2 seed in the NFC. Take it.
I'll say this. If they can get past the Cardinals and Commanders, going 7-1 to that Buffalo game, which the minimum expectation is they go 1-1 over these next two. But as I've said, on multiple occasions with SK, it's just like, okay, after we got done with the Saints game, I said, you got 4 games, 2 on either side of the bye. At minimum, you should go 3-1. They won the first 2. So worst case scenario, they go 1-1 in the next 2. So they're either 7-1 or 6-2 going into that Buffalo game. Between Buffalo, Dallas, New England, and the Jets, I think a realistic expectation is that they split those 4 games. If they go 3-1 in those 4 games, all bets are off. And then it's, yes, now we're in the catbird seat, as they say, for the 2 seed. But let's just say that you get your next 2 and then you split your next 4. So you go 4-2 in your next 6 on top of your 5-1. That puts you at 9-3 going into your game at Detroit, home against the Colts and Giants, and then on the road against the Packers and Bears. If at that particular point you are already at 9 wins, to get to 11 wins, you need to go 2-3 in those last 5. So realistically, if I did my math right, okay, let's see, 7-1, 2-2, that's 9-3. Then you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. There's absolutely no reason this team should be any fewer than 11 wins at this point. I would. They're going to have a hiccup though, Mike. They always do.
Oh, sure. And again, it might even be next week it's Arizona. I'm well aware that's a possibility. But let me make this clear. When the Vikings have been the betting favorite, they're 5-0. That matters. And who are we going to be the betting underdog to? Or, like, honestly, the betting underdog, Buffalo, Dallas. That's it. I'm not even trying to be funny here. Please tell me. We'd be the underdog to New York Jets or Giants. No. I don't want to hear it.
No. They could still be underdogs in Green Bay.
Yes, that I could give you. Fair. I could give you that. But is Green Bay in it at that point? When do we play them? Week 17, I believe.
Week 17.
They could be out of it. They might not even be in a playoff position. They could be so far out. Like, the schedule really played into our favor this year. We talked about this in May, that the schedule was favorable. It became more unfavorable. How many backups have we played this year already? We're going to play another backup with Tyler Heineke in Washington because once is out. Kyler Murray got a little bit banged up. I think he's fine, though. I don't think he'll be out. But they're missing Hollywood Brown next week. Like, the Vikings have caught a lot of brace with injuries across the league on their schedule.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear this hiccup stuff. I get it. I'm more concerned for that Colts game. That's the hiccup I could see happening. The Colts, we never play the Colts good. Well, never. Not in my life. We always get trounced by the Colts for some reason.
All right, well, let's wrap it up. Let's just take a quick look at the slate of games tomorrow here. And again, this is a late night edition of Day with Mike and Kyla on the Purple Code, as well as the first edition of Mike with me on Purple and Gold for Days. Please comment, like, and subscribe, and share this with you. Again, this is the bye-week edition, so it's just a late night musings here. Looking at the schedule tomorrow, not a whole lot. I mean, the Cowboys should run roughshod over the Lions. Obviously, most Vikings fans in the area we're going to be, well, anywhere going to be, glued to the TV from the standpoint of hoping that Washington can just find a way to pull off something here. Not very many other exciting games on the schedule other than, Chiefs 49ers maybe. I mean, is there a particular game besides those two that stands out to you that you're really interested in here tomorrow, Mike, or is that just going to be a one and done with the Packers game?
I will watch games. I'll find a way to watch them. But let me say this. Thank God we don't have to watch Russell Wilson play a game this week. My God, he has been atrocious. I don't know what on earth Pete Carroll did before he traded him. I don't know what's up with Geno Smith, what he's eating, what kind of vitamins he's eating. Maybe I'll watch the Seahawks play.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, that I agree. That Heineke game, I'll definitely have my eye on it. Green Bay, Washington Commanders. If Heineke can give us the best bye week present as a former Vikings quarterback and go and beat the Packers to put them at 3-4. Oh, that would just be fantastic. Fantastic.
I'll say this, not that this is a Packers podcast or anything, but it's a Vikings one, so we always love talking about our neighbor cities. If they lose tomorrow, then have to go to Buffalo next Sunday night. They could be done. Yes, they got the Lions and they got the Cowboys. So this is a must-win game for them because 2 out of the next 3 are against the Bills and the Cowboys. They could be done before Thanksgiving because, by the way, the weekend after Thanksgiving, they go on the road to the Eagles. If they lose tomorrow, it's over. It's absolutely over. And then the only thing that can stop the Vikings from winning the division is the Vikings themselves. So I don't think we need to comment too much on the Bears or the Lions.
No.
Who does Philly got? No, Philly's on
the bye. All the good teams are on the bye.
Yeah, other than the Chiefs. Other than the Chiefs.
Rams, Bills, and Eagles are on the bye. All teams that probably go to the playoffs this year.
Yeah. I said it a couple of weeks ago that the team that scares me most out of the West isn't Arizona, but it's actually San Francisco. Not because I think that Garoppolo is like this world beater, but I still believe that
Christian McCaffrey.
Now that they got, even before they got McCaffrey, my biggest fear from them is the fact that they still have greatness on both the offensive and defensive lines. And I'm really going to be interested in seeing what they do against Patrick Mahomes tomorrow because they're going to be at home. They've just got a new toy in Christian McCaffrey, as you said. And in my opinion, I think the 49ers are the team to beat in the West. Do you see anybody? I know Arizona looked good last night or Thursday night, but it was the Saints.
And the Saints beat themselves. They threw 3 pick sixes.
Basically, that.
Well, how do you win a game when you turn the ball over for 3 touchdowns?
It reminds me of the old Jim Mora playoffs. I don't care who you play. It doesn't matter what kind of team you are. There's no way you can throw that many interceptions and expect to win any game out there. And that almost is exactly how that game went. Well, I think we're going to wrap for here tonight, unless you got anything else, Mike.
No, I was just say this randomly. This is one thing you brought up when you said Packers talk.
Yeah.
Did you see that guy who sang the Vikings fight song on the Packers radio?
Yes.
That man is a legend.
And
he waited 45 minutes to do that. That's fantastic.
I hate that song, but I got to give the guy some props. He waited 45 minutes to just sing that annoying song to us. And, you know what? It's not like that's never been done in the worst. Well, that's going to wrap it up for today on the late night version of A Day with Mike and Kyla / the debut episode of Mike on the Purple and Gold for Days podcast. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Cheer on the Washington Commanders. We will be live at 6:30 Central Time for our normal show with A Day with Mike and Kyla on the Purple Code. So please tap in and check us out with that. With special guest Nicole from Vancouver on there. And so we'll have a little bit more to be able to break down this weekend's game starting tomorrow, as well as moving forward the rest of the season for the Vikings. So just a reminder, on the Purple and Gold for Days, we just want to see the Vikings win the Super Bowl just once before we die, much like many other Vikings fans of Vikings podcast. Thanks everybody again for joining us. Have a great rest of your evening. Oh, do we get a comment in here? Hey, Pablo, thanks for coming. Much appreciated. Sorry you got in here at the end, but we're going to be back on the Purple Code at 6:30 on Monday, and keep it. Please subscribe to the Purple and Gold for Days channel here and get those notifications, because we don't have an official schedule. We're just going to go whenever we feel like going there, but we'll be putting out content at least once or twice a week here. So thanks for giving us the shout out there, Pablo. Much appreciated. Thanks again for joining us, and have a great rest of your evening. Skol Vikes and go Commanders.
Skol.